Hey, what is going on, guys? Hope you're having a fantastic week. Starting off the week right, man. We're doing Sunday Night Live. We've got Ryan as well as Jonathan. Fellas, what's going on?
I'm glad I don't feel like I'm going to die this week.
That's
like I
good,
did last
man.
week.
Yeah. You
Doing
had
well.
a little trip to the emergency room?
Yeah. I thought I was having a heart attack. It was
Yeah.
not great. Both
That's
my hands
scary,
went
man.
numb, but they diagnosed me with the flu. So it was, great way to start off the new year because that happened on New Year's Day. And I was like, this New Year is going to be better. It's going to be different. We're going to start off thinking you're going to have a heart attack.
That's
what
right.
a great way to start everything going for 2023. It's just downhill from here for me.
They give you some meds, or they tell you just to rest?
No, it was just the flu. So they did a bunch of tests and stuff, and they're like, "Hey, you're not dying." So that was it. And then my body, I guess they figured, they're guessing, has a very reactive immune system. So it's like, you have the flu, and then it kills it in a day, and then I'm fine. So
Michael, you know the doctor's like, this is the third time we've seen you this week, Ryan. Get out of here.
For sure. Hey, Ryan, check your microphone, see if if StreamYard's using yours. It may be using your when you disconnect your camera. While you're doing that, I'm gonna say hi to some folks in the chat. Glad you guys are here. Nadine, what's going on, man? Brian, Chris, I think Chris hopped in, but he's got I think he has a birthday today. So congratulations, Chris.
I'll be right back.
Birthday there, buddy.
The audio interface is kind of an important tool, so I've forgotten mine. So I'll be right back.
See, that's why I knew I was hearing something different. Tim, what's going on, buddy? Miles is in the house. Mark, good to see you. Titus is a local from here. I did his home theater many years ago. Titus, we need to do an updated one. I believe you got a new setup in your new place. So we just dropped a new video today. So that was a fun. Jonathan, that was a Trinov Kaleidoscape, but then the speakers were kind of mixed. It was a combination of a JTR front sound stage with 2 JTR subwoofers up front, but then in the back he's got 2 Stark subwoofers, smaller ones, 15s, and then JBL synthesis surrounds and Atmos speakers. So it was kind of a combination there. So
was that the one you drove to this week?
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. So it's about a 2.5 hour drive down kind of south of South Florida. So really, really nice gentleman, man. Him and his wife, just super nice family. And I always love meeting new people, man, and just seeing, hearing about their passion and, their excitement for the hobby and just kind of trying to capture their journey, and what was cool with him is he's a lot like me. He does not consider himself handy at all. And so like building stuff and constructing stuff like a riser, that's like daunting, man. Cause he's like, dude, I got a screwdriver and a hammer and that's about it, but his buddy just convinced him. He's like, hey man, you really should go for this and I'll help you, whatever you need. And so he kind of pushed him out of his comfort zone. Yeah. And he went in and he was like, man, I'm going to try to build this as best I can. It's not a perfect room. There's places that, where he's got paint dings and he's like, I didn't do a perfect job, but I did the best I could. And, he mounted his, on his riser, he thought it'd be a good idea to mount the plugs, the outlets for his chairs on top of it. Well, the bad thing is now you got a cable coming out of the, so that, and then somebody stepped on it and he had cut the square a little too big. And so it's like,
Is that better? Is my mic better?
Much better.
Okay.
So but the cool thing is like he went for it. And I just think that's awesome. And I love trying to celebrate that. And, I'm not ever doing home theater tours to showcase just the best and the brightest and the coolest, although his is amazing home theater, but he's got expensive gear, but a lot of it was DIY kind of stuff too. So it was really cool to see both aspects. He didn't just hire somebody and come in and build my home theater and he doesn't know anything about it. He's, diving into the Trinov, trying to figure out how do I run this thing? How do I work it? How do I calibrate it? And, and so it was just really cool, man. So I hope you guys get a chance to watch that. He's just a super, super nice guy. And, at the end of this month, I think I've shared this a little bit. I know I have on Patreon. But at the end of this month, I'll actually be flying out. Me and Brad from Home Theater Gamer, I hired him to come and help me. But we're going to be filming a $500,000 home theater.
Yikes.
It's completely decked out, Star Wars themed. I mean, like to the hilt, man. It's going to be sweet. That'll be a fun one. So I like to capture those types of things. I like to capture budget ones. I like to share DIY stuff. I mean, pretty much anything, man. I absolutely love it. So, oh, look at here. Hey, check this out. Jay Moore, you are indeed close to me, brother. Hit me up. Send me an email or reach out to me on Facebook if you're not friends there. You can even do facebook.com/youthman or shoot me an email, michael@youthmanreviews.com. But yeah, man, Brandon literally is probably 30 minutes from me. So that'll be super, super close, man. I'd love to connect with you. So I like it, man. So super cool. Anything exciting happening before we jump into you guys' questions? By the way, if you have questions, by all means, drop those in the chat. We'll be starring those through the night. We pretty much just kind of go through those chronologically. If you do super chats, we try to put those up to the top and address those first. But man, we'd love to get some great comments, some great discussion. Hope you guys are having an amazing beginning of 2023.
I mean, mine was off with a bang already, as we noted.
You're killing it, dude. Almost killing it.
Almost killing it, literally. Thanks, Michael.
That's funny, man. Yeah, Steven, check this out, dude. So Steven Garcia, this was really cool. A friend of mine, I did his home theater tour, I think last year, and he texted me today. He said, "Hey, Michael, I've got a silver ticket, the fabric, silver ticket screen, and I just want to give it to somebody." I said, "Well, dude, I got the perfect guy." So I jumped over to Patreon real quick. I said, "Hey, anybody looking for one of these? He's willing to ship it to you. All you got to do is cover shipping." And so Steven Garcia, congratulations. Glad you got connected with him. So he's going to get an upgrade 120-inch silver ticket screen in the mail. Super pumped for you, man. That's awesome. Super cool, man. So anything else? We're going to jump right into the questions, man. So keep the questions coming as
I'm starting them.
As we're talking, and we'll just jump right into them tonight because we don't have a topic tonight. We're still just getting geared up here for the new year. So I
have a question to start us, maybe.
Okay, do it, man.
Comment. So
yeah,
I've been subscribing to Apple TV and Apple Music HD for the spatial audio. I just read in the forums that here in the last few days, Atmos or spatial audio came to Amazon's music service. But I think the negative is you have to have a Cube 3. Which I don't have. I have like 4 of these things in my house, but they're all Fire Sticks.
Right.
So
you got to buy the Cube.
Yeah,
the Fire Stick Cube, I guess, is what they call it, or is that something different than a Cube 3?
It's a Fire Cube. So instead of being like a stick of gum, it's like a little, almost like Apple TV. It's like a cube.
Yeah, it's a big square.
Why are there so many devices?
Exactly. Why are they so proprietary? You can't. They have to be able to put it on the Fire Stick. So I'm hoping it'll come in a future patch, or maybe they just want you to. The Cube is the more expensive model. They might want you to upgrade. Yada yada. Yeah. But if anyone, I know there's kind of at least in the Kansas City group, everyone's kind of like, I have to buy an Apple to get spatial audio. Not anymore. Maybe. At least that's what we're hearing.
Maybe. I'm gonna wait for you to try it, and then I will come behind you.
There's 2 confirmations of it in that thread where they're talking about we want that from Amazon Music. So I think it's probably legit.
Yeah.
The same guys that couldn't get it before, it said it was an update, and all of a sudden it works.
I mean, speaking of streaming devices, I had massive problems with my Apple TV last night with YouTube TV, in that I learned on YouTube TV you only get, unless you have 5.1 audio disabled, you only get 24p content. It was terrible. And then
wait, say that again.
If you disable the 5.1 audio in Apple TV's menu, you can then get 60p. But if you don't do that, all of YouTube TV is restricted to 24p. And it looks like trash. So I know it wasn't YouTube TV because I went over to NVIDIA Shield and worked fine. It looked great. But the Apple TV looked horrific. I'm like, why does YouTube... I was blaming YouTube TV. And why does this look so bad? But it was Apple TV. So it was... Why can't just one be really good at everything? Why do they have to suck so much at different things?
Mike says the Cube is so much better, way more responsive, lots more processing power, which makes sense. And think about this: they've got to make. I'm assuming they're different price points.
Yes.
You know,
Yeah.
So one's probably $30. What's the Cube? 80?
I think that's about right. There's a
I
couple
mean,
different versions, but yeah.
a lot of people aren't. I mean, think about the casual viewer. The casual viewer.
But I don't want to think about the casual viewer, Michael. I don't care about the casual viewer.
You're way outside the norm, man. We are not normal, guys.
I know, but that's why I can dunk on him, because nobody here is the casual viewer.
So, well, then why is Jonathan rocking these Fire Stick TVs?
I got 4 of them.
I think the Fire Stick TV is fine for like a TV that we recognize that doesn't need it, because I'm not going to spend that money. Yeah. But why can't we have an expensive device that just works?
I don't know, man.
With everything. Like, why does the Apple TV have this problem with YouTube? Why can't the Apple TV pass through full audio? Like, why?
To be fair, I think Apple's been pretty good about updates, and so if you complain about it to the right people, you might get someone to fix that.
Yeah,
it's just
the hardware's there.
Yeah,
Tommy says he's a antenna for life, man.
Well, you get a better picture that way.
Less complicated, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Man.
Well, I don't know about less complicated. You can tear your hair out trying to get a good signal.
You just gotta I don't know.
Putting it on the roof. My wife just watches me fall through the window, just Chevy Chase style, falls down.
No lie, man. Growing up, my dad had this massive, I mean, we're talking 12-foot antenna on top of our roof, man. It was crazy.
Was that one of the bird catchers? The dishes?
We had that too. We had satellite at one time, but before that, we had like literal antenna up there. And sometimes the TV wasn't real good, so I'd climb up on the roof and I'd spin that thing around a little bit and adjust.
It's a wonder we're all still alive.
Yeah, I didn't.
With what our parents did.
Yeah, we didn't have the.
Hey, Michael,
cell phone.
Go climb on the roof and fix the TV. Instead of having us go up and push a power button, Michael's parents are having him climb on the mother trucking roof to fix the signal. If only CPS was around during those times, man.
They would have.
So why were you taken away from your parents? Oh, they had me climb on the roof to fix their TV while they were eating their TV dinner.
That's hilarious.
I'm sure your parents are amazing people.
They were all right. They was good.
They were all right.
Did it have one of those little boxes that you turn like north or southwest and it was supposed to be automatic that broke, or did it just not have that?
Honestly, that part I don't remember. I remember our satellite dish would move, but that was inside. You'd change it with a remote, and it had a motor on it. But I remember specifically we had this big antenna. But this was when I was quite a bit younger, probably even younger than teenage years. So I was probably 10. On my roof. But it was a big pole. It was cool because there was a big pole that went right up the side of the house, so I could kind of straddle the pole,
they talk about paint chips and living under power lines, and here's Michael up there on the antenna.
Dude, I was killing it, man.
It's all right. My dad had me hold a screwdriver against my battery while he started his truck sometimes, so it's a wonder why I'm not dead.
Sorry to take us off topic with the
sometimes the deviations are the best part.
Yeah. Fun stuff, man. Let's see. Cool. All right. Did that answer your question, Jonathan? All right. You're gonna find out. All right. So I'm not good at multitasking. So sometimes, like, if y'all are saying something, I'm checking the comments. I'm trying to respond to people, and then I'm like, okay, and then I'm like, I have no idea what those guys were even talking about.
Well, I'd just like to see if we have anybody in the chat that can try it with their Fire devices and see if, for instance, someone was saying he thought he had it in the Fire Max, and later he came back and said, no, it's not working. And that's kind of the thing, right? In these threads, a lot of people are like, I got Atmos. Well, how do you know you got Atmos?
Well, I'd be curious to know if it works through a PC and if you could stream it in that way too, or if it has to come through a Cube.
Valid question. But then you find out, later that they didn't actually have Atmos. It was a surround up mixer, and they're just green, and they didn't realize it's not Atmos.
Yep.
You can look at your incoming signal. If you got a Denim Ranch, you hit the info button. It'll tell you if it's coming in as Dolby Atmos. It should light up the LCD screen if you can see that from your seat if it's Dolby Atmos. Just because you hear sound there doesn't mean it's true Atmos.
For sure, man. All right. Well, let's jump on to some content here, man. We've got some questions here.
Keep them coming.
Yeah. So we'll get through as many as we can. Mike Larry, good to see you tonight, brother. Mike says, are there any AVRs that do a better job providing power to multiple channels and staying consistent in the power that they provide? I'm debating an Anthem MRX 1140. is why I ask. Or should I go with amps? Great question, man.
That's a big question. There's a lot that goes with that. Like what speakers you have, how loud do you like to listen? I mean, they could be fine, but maybe you're going to be.
So, Mike, I just literally a couple of days ago, I did a video talking about, do you need an amplifier? And like Ryan said, there's a lot of pieces to that, but you're talking sensitivity. How big is your room? Typically with AVRs, the more speakers you add to it, the less per channel wattage you're going to get. That may be okay for your listening. How loud do you listen to it? How close are you to your speakers? How far? And even what ohms? I didn't even mention that in the video. Like, if you've got 4 ohm speakers, they're going to demand more from that AVR, and your AVR may or may not be up to that task if you've got a lot of speakers that it's powering. So definitely check out that video. I think I can go into it pretty extensively. Jonathan, what are your thoughts on that?
I put a link in the chat. Audioholics usually does a real good bench test, and Gene has reviewed that 1140 Anthem.
Nice.
And it comes up, it does pretty well. It looks like it hits about 150 watts per channel at 8 ohms for 2 channels.
For 2 though, that's what I struggle with though. Like, what does it do for? Because that one's probably what, 7.
I'm scrolling down.
I don't think they really do a big channel. I don't even know if they do an 11 channel. Maybe it's
usually you can find a 5 or a 7 channel.
I think it does 15 channels.
That one is okay.
Yeah, but they have 2 different stacks for power. They have 1 through 5, which is on 1, and then they have the remaining channels, which are on smaller amplification. So it's going to depend. And the more channels you drive, the
100%.
more stress you're going to put on your AVR. Really, the only company that I know of that is doing this with big boys is Storm is putting out an AVR that I think Focal has also done it, or has used Storm as an OEM for their AVR. It is doing 200 watt power supplies per channel.
Really?
Yep.
Okay, where are their specs on here? Oh, wow. Right at the top. So I was looking for like on the page. All right,
and they say maximum continuous channels 1 through 5 is 140 at 8 ohms.
Yep. Here, I'll zoom in a little bit for you guys.
And then the remaining channels are like 60. So
okay. So see, you're losing quite a bit. But again, 60 watts may be enough.
Gene's saying 85 watts of channels, what he measured at 5 channels.
Yeah, most of the time, guys, remember that these are going to be overstated. For the most part, you're not going to get what is being referenced here for the most part. Sometimes you do, but for the most part, they're going to be overstated.
Denna and Marantz kind of have a rule of thumb in their industry that they say 70%.
Yeah.
That will make 70% rated power with all channels driven.
Right.
So that's actually, it sounds kind of lame, but that's probably one of the highest in the industry.
That's actually really good.
They're the only ones quoting that number, which means they probably have something to it.
Yeah. I mean, if you want big time internal power, Storm's probably the only one. And I think their MSRP is like over 15 grand.
Yeah. So you're definitely going to pay. It'd be a lot easier and cheaper to add an external amplifier. If you're just trying to buy an AVR for really high power. Somebody was telling me in my comments, I think yesterday, they said there are AVRs that have like 200 plus watts or 300 watts. I'm like, you got any model numbers? He's like, I've seen them. I'm like, you got any model numbers?
Storm's the only one that I know of.
He would never say.
Right
so
now.
I don't think he really knows, if I had to guess. What's up, Joe? Good to see you, man. All right, man. Yeah, Chana definitely. He's at CES. Did that finish today? Yeah, Chana was there. I think.
I don't think it's done yet. I think it's 6 p.m. Pacific time.
Yeah,
is when it's done.
I think FOMO. I believe he's there. Be the Installer's there. Who else? Woody Sound Up. He went for a little bit. Jordan from Haterade Cowboy. He was there. So lots of folks, man. So yeah, Chana should be having some pretty cool content. Hopefully, I think he said he even has a dedicated phone for content. So we'll see. All right, Mike. Hopefully that answers your question there, brother. Let's pull up the next one. Matt H. All of my surround channels seem quiet during Dolby recordings. Ran direct live, but still seems too quiet. So what kind of suggestions can we give to Matt?
Man, these are...
Matt,
go ahead.
Dolby recording.
I was just going to ask what his speakers are. Can we have a supplementary follow-up there? Because I got a friend who tells me his surround speakers are too quiet, and I asked him what speakers he got. He's like, well, I got some of those little Yamaha 1-inch cubes. I said, well,
yeah, get some better speakers, buddy.
I got some Bose.
Mm.
Bose Power Cubes. But that's just like the last question with Mike. There's a lot that goes into this. Speakers, distance from the main listening position. Are you off axis? Their power delivery. How much power do these speakers have to be available to them? What mixes are you using for testing? I mean, that's something else to consider. Is a lot of things that we think are going to have a ton of Atmos or a ton of surround don't. So there's not as much material out there as people think. So it's really important when you're doing these that you're doing like your test tones, taking measurements off the test tones, and or doing, well, I say and, I shouldn't say or, you should do both, and do like actual Dolby or DTS demo material that's designed specifically to showcase this stuff and see how it sounds then. Because just saying, oh, it seems quiet, well, maybe the material you're watching is quiet in the surround channels. So I would start with doing a SPL match. So sound meter, you could do your phone. I think for this, it would be a decent starting point, and make sure that they're all the same SPL. And then from there, using test tones, from there, get some Dolby or DTS surround test material like the Leaf or a Maze demo, or the Unfold. All of those are fantastic to be able to see how all of that is going. And as Jonathan just asked how big your room is. I mean, if your speakers are, if they're 1-inch drivers or however big those Emotivas are, and they're having to go a really long way, maybe you're just overdriving them and distortion, and you're perceiving that as quiet. There's a bunch of variables that go into this. Anything that I missed that you guys want to add?
No, the SPL thing is really important because we all know from our auto EQ experience that they don't always get it right.
Not always accurate.
Don't always. I think the majority of the time it's off. That's just my experience.
Yeah. And if once you get it to that point, then of course, you know, if you want to tweak it a little bit to your liking, I know guys that bump up, you know, maybe a center channel a little bit, or bump up their heights or Atmos or whatever, you know, that's preference, but at least get it to where they're all level. And then you can know, okay, at least know that they're, you know, on track with it. So you definitely want to do that. So yeah. And Joe actually and Sean have been working on a thing. So they've got a toolkit. Joe, what is the website for that? I forget the URL. Spatial CD, something like that. It's like spatialcd.com. So anyway, but they've got something that they're trying to do something that's different in the industry and providing even Dolby Atmos test tracks, which really nobody's done that yet. So, and
while that's true, and I do appreciate them for that, most AVRs and pre-pros will come with test tones built into them. Like you can Marantz and Denon, anything from Sound United, you're going to be able to go in and turn on the test tones, then see using a meter how loud it is, and go from there. So my advice is to start with what's built into your system and then build out from that point. But SPL is probably the big starting point, and then start adding and going from there.
Totally agree there, man. All right, let me go back up here. So Matt, appreciate that, buddy.
And I'm going to jump one more thing, not related to that. Guys, try not to ask the same question more than once. I promise we're starring them. Just because we don't answer them, we go from first in. So it's first in.
I'm just literally going rocking right from
first
the top
in,
to the
first
bottom.
out. So if you ask your question now, it's not going to get answered for a while. But I am starring them. So don't think that we're not. Just try and refrain from asking them more than once, because then I'm going to start again and it's just going to get confusing.
We got you covered, man. Joan, appreciate the question. What do you think of a cheaper end of REL or REL subs for a 2.1 system, most for Netflix and YouTube watching? So a REL sub for Netflix and YouTube, that's pretty cool, man. Nothing wrong with that. I haven't had any experience like in for review any REL subs. I did have a gentleman. I went to his home. He had some of the, I think they were the 212, and they were nice looking, and they sounded good, but they didn't have a ton of like, they didn't have what I wanted from a subwoofer. And it could have been the way he had it calibrated, but it just wasn't.
I'm just looking at Jonathan's unchanging face as Rel came up. Just no reaction. Just straight level, nothing came through there.
Well, I have to be careful, right? Because it's all about your expectations.
Yeah, sure.
You know, somebody, you go and look at I got a story to tell you here.
Yeah, man.
On the ABS forum years ago, 10 years ago or so, somebody was talking about how this little Pioneer SW8 subwoofer was amazing. And the reviews on Newegg is thousands of reviews, and it was like a 4.8 star sub out of 5. And
yeah,
a box about this big with a little ancient driver. Obviously made a lot of people happy, right? With a 4.8 score. Sure. But I got it, and I was reviewing some subwoofers at the time. And I had kind of a baseline of like 75 dB, and 85 dB was kind of where my chart was focused on.
Right.
That little Pioneer SW8 broke the line in 1 point over 75 dB and couldn't even hit 85 dB. Like for all it was worth, it just couldn't do it. So it was the very definition of a one-note wonder from an enthusiast perspective, because it was like 40 hertz, right? A bubble at 40 hertz that it could break the 75 dB point.
Sure. But
it made a lot of people happy. So output isn't everything. It's important to us three. We appreciate it, but you know, like it all depends on what you want. I'm sure it could be fine for what you're after. It depends on what you're after.
Rel makes beautiful looking subs. I think they sound good. They're just not like massive output, that's for sure. And I like massive output. Maybe
they're very pretty output. And they live and die by that. What is it? The high input.
Yeah, that I never quite understood that. Like, how in the world that even makes sense to me? And you know, who am I? I'm just, you know, I don't know anything, but it just seems interesting.
While we're on that topic, let me present this because it's a funny little picture. I'm gonna share my screen.
That one? No, that's mine. Let me remove that.
How do I share this thing? Somebody was asking about a sound meter.
Bring that up for you.
Can you guys see the screen here?
Yeah.
So I've done some other ones, like some other budget subwoofers. Here's the big F12. This looks like it's about 50 hertz. So it starts about 30 hertz and plays up to about 80 hertz pretty well. This is a BIC V1220. This is a Eclipse RW12D, right? And I'm going on down, and here was the SW8.
Oh man! Wow!
So it played one little bump in my test area, and this is I can't even read the thing there; it's too small. But effectively, it had one little 40 hertz bump, and it had a 4.8 star. So you know, like I guess people just liked that frequency. All right, that's all.
Yeah, well, I have a personal experience with Rel, Jonathan, as it relates to you. I mean, when you and I first met, I had the Rel 212 SEs, and I thought they were the bee's knees, to keep this PG. I thought they were amazing. They looked great. They had two 12-inch front-firing drivers and then a third passive driver, and I thought they were amazing.
Yeah.
And then I over to Jonathan's, and I look around and go, my subs don't do that.
Yeah.
So then he ruined me forever and told me about JTR, and that's where.
No, I haven't heard their new subs, or I say new. They're Predators, which they're supposed to be kind of for home theater.
Okay. I mean, I think they do an okay job. I just think that there's better for the money. I think that's. I think for Rel, you're paying for a beautiful box. And then I think the sound comes second, right? I think they're okay, but you can get better subs for the money, for sure.
I think biggest thing, you know, like we always try to say, if you have an opportunity to go hear some for yourself, then you'll know. You know, you can hear, does that meet your expectations? Does that provide enough output for you? Does it dig deep enough for you? And if it does, if it checks all those boxes and it looks great, man, go for it. I'm just not so sure that there is I guess there's a cheaper end of Rel. He didn't say a cheap Rel, because that's one thing. Rel's typically not on the budget side of things, but I see what you're saying. Just
I think in any price point, there's going to be something else that is going to offer a better value for your money and totally eclipse it.
Yeah.
At that price point.
Yeah. I would agree with that. Let me throw this up real quick. So Explanoid, appreciate the $5 super chat, man. If you had a question, oh, there it is right there. I'm assuming I'm going to do this right here. So is there any way to use my old Denon 3808 CI AVR as an amp for my new Denon with pre-outs? That's a great question, man. I've heard of guys doing that. I personally have never tried that, but I have heard of people kind of repurposing an old AVR, because a lot of times your older AVRs have kind of these beefy power supplies. And sometimes the newer ones don't have quite as much, amplification for all those channels. And so reusing that to be able, instead of having to buy an actual separate amplifier, you can definitely do that. Have y'all had any experience doing that?
No, I haven't tried
No.
it. There's people that do on the forums. It sounds complicated.
Yeah.
Just make it, if you're going to do it, make your 3808 as it was, a 0 unity on the reference, and turn off your EQ and so forth, and just let your other amp process it. It could work, but I don't know.
I feel like for the most part, the channels that you're going to want to do that on are the ones that Denon 3808 isn't going to work with. I feel like it'd probably just be better to get a cheaper amp and do it that way than trying to utilize something in a capacity that wasn't designed for. I'm not a huge fan of just increasing complexity for the sake of saving a few bucks. I get that some people have to, and I totally understand that, but I feel like at the end of the day, the heartache, it's worth bypassing for a few dollars. You don't need a tremendously power or expensive amplifier to run something like Atmos speakers or something like that. It's, to me, save yourself the heartache and get a cheap amp and do it that way. That's my recommendation. I've heard of people doing to do this to increase their channel counts.
Yeah, now that would get really complicated.
But it's just,
and then you're duplicating channels,
right? Because then you have to split out the HDMI, and it just gets really messy, and it's not worth it, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think he's just trying to utilize. I mean, think about it. You're trying to save some money. I get that.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe you upgraded, and instead of selling the amplifier or the old AVR, you're like, hey, I'll just repurpose.
Here's my advice on that. Every time that I've done that, or every time I've tried to take a shortcut, we've talked about this before. It always comes back to me buying it in the long run and going, why didn't I just do this to begin with? Every time. So I've stopped doing that because it's not worth it. You do it too many times, and it's becomes a waste of time.
So it'd probably be easier just to sell the old AVR, put that money towards an amplifier if you need it.
For sure. And it does not
consider going used,
Oh, absolutely. It does not take a tremendous amount of money or cost for an amplifier. Like looking at used pro amps is a great way to go.
Sure.
Behringer A500s, A800s. I'm getting ready to unload 10 of them. So there's tons of options out there for not a lot of money that I think would be a much better fit than trying to repurpose something that in a use case that wasn't designed for.
I agree. Chadman's got a question. What percentage of your home theater budget would you allow for acoustic treatment? Price to value, not really a DIY guy. Okay, so putting DIY aside, so he's looking at something like ATS. He's looking at something like, what's that? Auralex? Is that right?
Yeah.
Auralex is good.
There's GIK. So there's, most of those are going to run you probably about, a lot of them are about $100 ish. When you say 80, maybe to $100 per.
Yeah, that's probably about right.
Per like 2 foot by 4 foot panel. Man, how much? The reality is you need enough acoustic treatment to treat your room and get rid of the, you don't want to deaden the room, but I don't know if you can really put a percentage of your budget. It's like whatever it costs to effectively treat your room, that really is where you kind of should start.
Do it now. It comes back to exactly what I just said of don't try and think, I don't need that and I don't want to spend the money and I'm going to shortcut this because you're going to do it in the long run. Unless you have a great room already.
I'm definitely not super scientific when it comes to room treatments. I just know from my own experience, my room, when I first set up my home theater, solid walls on the right, the left, the rear, ceiling. And one day somebody recommended in a video, they're like, just do a clap test and just sit in your main listening position and clap pretty loud just one time and just listen. Like, what happens in the room to that one clap? And if it's bouncing all over your room and there's this really long decay, you definitely need to treat that room. So no amount of speakers, no amount of room correction. That's not ideal. Treat the room first. And then what you may find is you don't have to go down this rabbit hole so often of, oh, I need bigger and better speakers. Because the problem wasn't the speakers to begin with. The problem was your room was, causing those speakers not to perform as well as they could. So I'm with Ryan. I would, if you're not willing to go DIY, I'm not DIY either, but I know if I needed to, I could contact a friend of mine, Derek, and I'd be like, hey, Derek, you got the tools and everything. Can I buy you a couple lunches and we just come over a couple weekends or whatever? And I just need to build some acoustic panels and have him help you walk, let's do it together, find somebody that's handy, buy them lunch or something, or buy them something for their home theater or whatever as a thank you, or just pay them outright, if you're not able to do that. So what are your thoughts on that, Jonathan? You're quiet on that one. You got acoustic treatment and very affordable acoustic treatment in your room.
I do. And I started out, my last home theater room had no acoustic treatment at all. It was tile floor and drywall and, drywall ceiling. And it was like an echo chamber, exactly what, Michael's talking about, where if you did a clap test, it'd probably knock you over.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you can accommodate, and I sort of did this by accident because I was pretty green in the hobby still. You can kind of accommodate a room like that by choosing your speakers. And since you're asking what percentage of your budget should allow, you're probably in the process of building a home theater, I'm going to guess, Chadman. So maybe if you consider like the dispersion characteristics of a speaker, if you get a narrower dispersion, then it keeps some of the overspray off the sidewalls and it doesn't then sound as reverby or as actively echoey in the room. So you can, I'm not saying that you should avoid room treatments at all. I'm saying that there are some design choices as you set up your theater that you can kind of help accommodate where you are at in that journey. Like if you got my speakers at 150 degree dispersion horizontal, that wouldn't be good in a room that has no treatments at all.
That's like wide. It'd
just be all over the place. The sound would be all over the place from everywhere. So contrast to that, like Michael's got JTR speakers. They have a 90 degree or 60 degree, even depending on which way the horn's loaded. Dispersion. So that's going to keep that. It's instead of being like this,
it would help.
It's like this. So it's going to help keep some of that active energy off the wall.
Sure.
Now you could test, I think, with a pillow. If you have a nice big fluffy pillow, and you could put it on a chair and kind of put it in your first reflection points and play with it. It's going to be similar to what you're going to get with a small panel. And you'll probably hear some differences, especially if you're sitting in that main listening position for that. Play with it, see what you think. And rather than, you can buy a couple panels, not that much money, probably $150 for a couple of them, but you could go to a Home Depot or Lowe's and buy 2x4 panels of Rockwell for really cheap and just stick it on the wall.
Tack them on there.
Just to try it and see what you like.
Home Depot doesn't sell Rockwell Safe and Sound. Lowe's does. Home Depot doesn't.
Okay.
I think that's a great idea. Like if you're going to treat anyway, to find locations, buy a couple bundles of it and just stick it in the room. And see what that ends up working with. My only recommendation for that is Rockwell Safe and Sound can be kind of nasty to work with. So make sure you glove up and mask up because it's not the nicest.
And I appreciate Rex's comment here. He says, count on 10% for room acoustic treatments, but I'm just wondering, like, where did that number come from? Like, how do you know that we need 10% of our full budget to go towards that? And I'm not challenging that. I'm just asking a question. Seems, you know what I mean?
Jonathan, I really like your idea of taking pillows and stuff or blankets or whatever you have.
Try something that you have.
Recommend sleeping bags. If you got a nice big thick sleeping bag, you can even just hang that floor to ceiling, tack it up there temporarily. You just get a flavor for it, right? It just gives you an idea of what the difference is. And it probably won't be night and day with just two of them or something, like it'll for your main listening position will make a difference. But at some point there's echoes going all around the room and you kind of need to put some treatments up different places.
Right. Yeah. Especially when you get to high speaker count. I mean, if you got 7 speakers, 9 speakers, I've got 11 in mine. Jonathan, you're running 11?
13.
13. And Ryan?
What?
How many speakers do you have?
42. 42. It's 42. It goes up every time we have one of these calls.
I guess not counting subwoofers.
Not
really,
counting subs, I will be at, when I replace my tops, 27.
Holy cow. Yeah, so you got sound like bouncing all around the room. So you gotta have
I have to have treatments.
Yeah.
And I do want to iterate that the one of the main reasons I have such a high channel count is because of my speaker selection.
Yeah.
They're very, very narrow.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Another thing to consider is if you are going to do acoustic foam, I see a lot of people kind of get their feet wet with that. Don't get the 1-inch panels that are the cheap ones, because they just don't do anything. They need to be like 3 to 4 inches thick on the acoustic foam to make much of a difference, because the thickness of the panel is what determines how much frequency it absorbs.
Yeah.
And the wavelength of sound is long enough that the 1-inch panels are basically just cosmetic only.
Yeah.
So
most when you buy them from like ATS or GIK, typically they're like 2 inches thick. They do have some thicker ones. Like I use 7-inch thick behind my screen, and they're kind of like their bass traps. But what I didn't realize is that really only is effective down to, I think, 200 hertz. So you're not stopping a 80 hertz wave, a 50 hertz wave, much less a 20 hertz or a 10 hertz wave that's, 20, 30, 40 feet long or something like that. It's crazy.
Right.
So
I don't even think it's 200 hertz. It would barely do little at that point with the big thick panel, because
you're talking it's even higher than that.
It's kind of like a quarter length of the wavelength needs to be, because it goes a quarter in and a quarter out, and then you get your half, and it needs to be about a half of a wavelength to absorb sound. You can go out and do a Google search on
interesting
acoustic.
So that's cool. So you can kind of figure it out.
Yeah, it has to be feet thick in order to stop the lower frequencies.
Right. And that's why I mentioned to Ryan, like, hey, not counting your subwoofers, because really we're kind of still treating those upper frequencies, with acoustic panels.
Well, it also comes down to material density and the properties of the specific material and some other stuff that is going to make a factor. Now, somebody posted something, 2 people posted something. Don Hensley says Home Depot does sell Rockwell Safe and Sound. If that's the case, that is new since I've built my panels. So I guess Home Depot does. The second thing is Storm Audio just announced their Dirac live action room treatment with spatial. So that is going to be big, and that's coming to Storm.
It's big, but I'm with a gentleman earlier. Where did he say? See, Brian mentions that. Then there was another one, but he was kind of like, oh, here we go. Jed, he says, but Dirac has their new active room treatment. You don't need treatments anyway. And he's kidding. He's kidding. Okay. That's why the LOL's at the end. So
it helps.
Yeah.
But
so ideally, man, treat your room. These tools that we have, whether it's Dirac Live, whether it's this new, process that Dirac is coming through and adding, I think it can help, but ideally, man, I think you still want to physically treat the room, physically place your speakers, and then use those other pieces to enhance, not to fix like completely. So
yeah, the more you can do before EQ, the better.
Yeah, I agree. So hopefully that answers your question there, Chad, man. Great question.
Guys, I'm not going to star any more questions because we still have a ton.
Good. Cool. Got a super chat. David, appreciate the $5 super chat. I have a dedicated room with a 135-inch screen, but I'm curious on your thoughts for how many lumens for projector screen size, looking at a new Sony or JVC. So my recommendation, there's 2 good resources. Number one, Audio Advice Live. Not Audio Advice Live. Audio Advice has has 2 calculators on their website. One's more like designing your own room, and then they have another one that's just a projector calculator. And so you can find out exactly if you put a projector with this size screen at this distance, is it going to be sufficient for that? Another one's projectorcentral.com. It's an older calculator, but I think it still works really great. I used it when I built my theater room. Any other thoughts on?
You nailed it with Projector Central. That's the one I like.
Jonathan, have you checked out the one at Audio Advice Live?
I have, but I did it more for the riser or I don't think it was for projector screen size.
Okay.
It might have been riser height or something I was playing with on their site.
Yeah, they actually have a it's a new one too. I remember being at Audio Advice Live and they announced it.
Audio Advices is really good. I do like theirs, but
Put
my
up here.
opinion on projector brightness,
Yeah,
I personally like my eyeballs melting.
well, it still gives you an idea though.
It does, but I think you're going to want a brighter projector with a bigger screen.
So if you go to their website and go to home theater, and then right over here, you can see projector throw distance calculator. I think that'll show you. And if that one doesn't do this 3D home theater designer, that's one that allow you to build the whole thing. But I'm just going to go into this calculator here, the throw distance, because I think if I remember correctly, it'll show you lumens as well. Let's just say, what did he say? A Sony or JVC?
135 Sony or JVC.
Okay, let's just say I like JVC. That's just me. So let's say the NZ7, and then
Just
ceiling
leave it at
height. I'm not
90.
worried about that.
Just leave all that alone.
Yeah.
Image size.
Okay, here we go. What do you say? 130?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so you type that in there.
135.
135. Okay. And then depending on what screen gain you've got,
Yep. Just leave it at 1.
I think everything else is
117.
okay. So right here. So you're going to get 117, and it's in the green, so that means that it's acceptable. So if you can, so let's see what happens as you move this calculator back or this slider. I would think, I thought maybe if I went way back, it would turn this in like yellow or red.
Well, what's kind of interesting about that too is SDR is supposed to be 100 nits, but it's using the phrase HDR there. HDR
right.
is 1,000 nits and we know projectors can't do that.
Yeah.
But to Ryan's point, if you only got 100 nits and you're trying to do HDR and you're expecting to match your TV, it's not going to do it.
Yeah, sure.
You know? So Ryan's saying, hey, I want it to be as bright as possible so it doesn't pale in comparison to my OLED TV he has upstairs.
And that's be careful with that though too, because if you go with the brightest image as possible with say a pro projector, you're destroying your contrast for the most part. And that's why something like an NZ9 is $26,000, because you're getting stupid amounts of contrast with a very, very bright image.
Right.
So, and that's a reason why the Christie Eclipse is so expensive, is because you're, having 25,000 lumens with ridiculous amounts of contrast. And granted, the idea is to cinch down the iris to increase your contrast even further, but don't think that you're going to get the same level of HDR visibility on a projector as you would like an OLED or LED in your living rooms. It's not going to happen. But your projector is still going to be stupid bright. Like Scotty from NFM was over last night, and he was like, "Man, that NZ9 is stupid bright." When we were demoing some content, and it is. It looks phenomenal,
dude. I've seen your NZ9 several times.
It looks amazing, but it's expensive. Just be careful when you're going down that, and it can be expensive. The pursuit of light output can be expensive in home theater if you want the contrast to go along with it. But Jonathan's done some comparisons recently, and there's diminishing returns significantly, just like there is with any part of the hobby. You may find that you're getting plenty of light output with an Epson LS12000 that gives you a rated 2700 lumens. Not as great of contrast, but for the majority of content, it's probably going to look great. Yeah. So like we recommend with speakers, I highly recommend you guys go out and look at them, see for yourself, and then make determinations from there. And a great place to do that is M-Wave when we put all
I was just about to say that,
because seeing things like over here and then unhooking everything and then seeing it again is one thing, but being able to directly A/B compare something is something totally different.
I agree.
If we make it real practical, fellas, let's think about this. 135-inch screen. We got to talk about gain. We got to talk about like models we've seen.
Right.
Like Sony 295, it might be like 1,500 lumens or something. That's off the top of my head. I don't know if that's exactly accurate, but somewhere in that ballpark, right?
Yeah.
An Epson might be 2,400. 135-inch screen can be filled up better, in my opinion. I would prefer, personally speaking, to watch a 2,400 lumen projector on that than a 1,500 lumen screen. Now, if you dropped it down to 115 or 100-inch screen, Maybe you'd rather have the Sony because it might have a little bit higher contrast, that kind of thing. But we can make it practical because all of us have seen enough projectors to kind of say, I would say personally for 135-inch screen, you probably want to start going 2,000 lumens or north, right?
Mhm.
That's kind of where I fall out.
I would agree.
Because otherwise
At
it's kind of
least.
just dim. It just seems sort of bland when it's
Yeah.
too dim.
And it may be fine if you've never seen anything else, but as soon as you see something else, you will be ruined. And I don't like people having to reinvent and make the same mistakes that I think a lot of us have made. I personally would like my NZ9 to be putting out 4,000 or 5,000 lumens. I'd like it to be considerably brighter. But I want my eyeballs melting.
Yeah, I've got an NX7. I'd love it to be brighter, honestly.
Yeah,
I mean, it's bright during certain scenes, but
Jonathan, I think you're
like,
absolutely right that I would say at that screen size, at the very least, 2,000 lumens, which is where the NZ7 is. But I think you want brighter.
And then you got to think about the bulb dimming too, because my buddy Brian,
Brian, I'll come back to you, buddy.
So he bought a, what was it? JVC NX5 from Nebraska Furniture Mart. It had 2,500 hours on it. And I think I've told this story before. That thing should be 1,500, 1,700 lumens new. Yeah. When we measured it on the screen, it was 450 lumens or something like that. So in 2,500 hours from brand new JVC OEM bulb, right off the floor, it knocked down to 430 lumens. Yeah. It was, I'm not going to say unwatchable, but it wasn't pleasant. Like the first moment we hooked that up, I looked over Brian and said, you got to get a new bulb. This is not good.
And I encourage everybody, if you go down the bulb road, I am a personal believer in not buying the, third-party bulbs. Yeah. I've heard too many people having issues with those.
Yep, I agree.
And I think you just pay the extra bit of money, get an OEM bulb, and don't worry about it.
Yeah.
And realize you're going to have to pony up the money for a new bulb every year or two, A lot of the guys that are kind of keen on the hobby say about every 1,000 hours or something. That's kind of where you need. That's where the thresholds really starts going.
Oh, great!
For those JVC bulbs, for instance.
Yeah. I don't want to do. I know when I got my NX7 at that time, the bulb itself was $750. I'm like, I'm not looking forward to replacing that bulb, but hopefully they come down quite a bit.
There's a tiering though. I think one of the guys that we all know, Nick, has said like he'll get his bulbs, he'll run them for 1,000 hours, then hell sell them used on the forums, and someone will come by and pick them up for half price. So it's just his cycle. He's like, I want my projector to look the best. Wow. 1,000 hours isn't too much. People, they'll run longer. If you don't care about it getting dimmer.
Check that out.
People buy it out.
I can't imagine.
I never thought about it. I always start
noticing bulb fade immediately, and it drives me nuts. Laser for life.
I kind of do the bulb like my tires, man. I wait till they're almost ready to blow, and then I'm like, all right, I gotta get a new one.
Well, there goes Michael into the ditch. His bulb blown out.
Oh, don't want to do that, man. But cool, great question there. We got another super chat down here. Let me grab that one real quick. There's actually two of them.
And anytime you need to bail, Jonathan, because I think this is going to be a long stream.
Yeah, absolutely. Ryan Ward, appreciate the super chat, $8 super chat. Thoughts on Studio Tech 130 G4 versus the Studio Tech 100 screen paired with an NX7 light controlled room, much of a bump in experience with the gain difference. Are you guys familiar with
that projector? I do the 130.
And why is that?
You're getting a 30% increase in brightness. And I think the NX7 delivers enough contrast in its black floor that's acceptable, but you're going to increase your brightness of the projected image immensely with that 130.
And what size screen is he talking about here too?
That's a good question.
Well, is the 130 a 130 inch, or is that
no? It's a 1.3 gain.
Okay. And so then the 100 would be just a new, like
a 1 gain unity.
Okay, unity.
And it's a measured unity gain and a measured 1.3 gain. Like it's really what it is.
Right.
And Studio Tech's, like these Studio Tech screens are, in a lot of people's opinions, the de facto industry standard. I mean, they're expensive, but that's kind of, these are the screens that everybody bases and compares to, is those two screens for the most part.
So you do a 1.3.
I think with that projector,
he says 135 inches is what he does in the chat.
I do a 1.3 personally, but I like a really bright image. And the majority of content is going to be bright. It's not going to be those dark scenes. And I think it does good enough in the dark scenes that you're still going to have a great image.
Great question, man. Appreciate it.
Hit me up. They make a great screen.
Juan Hernandez says, is it worth buying front speakers with big, powerful woofers like most towers do, since they'll be crossed over at around 80 hertz anyways? Great question, man. So we've talked about this several times on the channel. You know, I like tower speakers, always have. Typically, if you've got a smaller speaker, well, I guess, no, I'm thinking, because Ryan, you were recommending like some bookshelves in that last conversation, but this is something a little bit different.
Bookshelves.
Worth buying front speakers with big woofers.
I think what we're comparing here is something like, if I had bookshelves, like I'm gonna Martin Logan says, let's say Martin Logan or Perlisten, like the 35 XTIs, the Perlisten R4Bs, and then we're comparing those to the Martin Logan 60 XTIs or the Perlisten, I don't know, R5Ts.
Their towers, yeah.
They're towers. The main difference, if you're listening to those speakers isolated, you are immediately going to be able to tell what the difference is. And you will almost guaranteed everyone will unanimously pick the one that can get lower. But if you give it a sub, it becomes much more of a gray area. You may be able to pick it out, but it becomes more of a, can you tell? And then a subjective, is it worth the difference in price?
I like big speakers, and I cannot lie. I'm just saying, man. No, but you can get a great sound, no doubt, with bookshelf speakers or smaller speakers, as long as you pair that with a subwoofer. I think.
Now, if he's talking big woofers like the 410s with quads with the 18s from RTJ, I mean, those are just subs.
Yeah, that's different.
What do you think, Jonathan? What's your opinion on this?
You guys nailed it. I don't have anything to add.
I think
you get a good sub integration, a high quality sub integration, and you won't be able to tell the difference between
get a good sound,
a good bookshelf and a good sub and a tower speaker.
Yeah, as long as you have a good sub. If you have a crappy sub,
in fact,
like that Panasonic or whatever you had that went bloop, and then you may be able to tell at that point.
That's not going to do it.
Right. Well, I was going to say, if you had a good quality sub and a bookshelf, you might actually get quite a bit more bass, if you, depending on the quality of the subwoofer, than a tower speaker, because it's going to dig deeper. If you have a good quality sub, maybe it'll go down to 20 hertz instead of 35 or 38 hertz, like a lot of those tower speakers. Of course, there's all kinds of extremes on all angles. You could get a tower speaker from JTR that'll play down to 15 hertz, you know, but
you're talking
just
about,
generally speaking.
But you're talking about getting a bookshelf and a sub versus just a tower.
Right. You go to Best Buy and you have a tower speaker here, or the same model on the bookshelf and a high quality sub, like you get an SVS sub or something.
Yeah, I would agree.
You're going to be fine.
100%.
Great question, man. Chris asks, why is it important to buy a separate streaming device like an Apple Roku, Amazon Fire Stick, than the one that's already installed in the TV, like the Sony Google TV? So question is it necessary? Do you get a much better performance out of an external streaming device, Apple TV, Roku, Fire Stick, than the one that comes with the TV? Are there limitations with the TVs? I'm kind of new to TVs. I just got an 85 inch. So
I think it's dependent on the TV. I think this goes for all of the streaming devices in general, in that every brand's like apps implementation on each streaming device, including the TV, is going to be slightly different. And some of them support different things than others. As an example, yesterday when I was watching the Chiefs game, I could not get YouTube TV on the Apple TV to play at anything over 24 hertz. It wouldn't do it at 24p. I couldn't do it. And looking online, it said that I had to disable 5.1 audio in order for YouTube TV to play it over 24p.
Interesting. So it's like a bandwidth limitation.
I guess. I don't know exactly what was causing it, but it wouldn't work. So then I went over to the NVIDIA Shield, worked great.
No problem.
Immediately, no problem. So those are the kind of things that you're going to run into from device to device, or TV to device, or whatever. There's just going to be different limitations app to app that are going to vary on the different devices. Like I think there's some apps that don't necessarily support native immersive audio formats where they do on other devices. I don't want to get too granular because these change all the time when the apps and stuff are updated and so on and so forth. But something else that people run into is the Apple TV doesn't support true pass-through of audio, right? The NVIDIA Shield does. So for things like Plex, the NVIDIA Shield hands down better over Apple TV for that reason. Something like Jonathan and I have recently got into is immersive audio for streaming, for things like for music. Apple TV supports that. The NVIDIA Shield does not. Or we were just talking about Prime and how Prime Music is now supposedly deploying that on the Cube. So it's those kind of things that I think are really important to consider. I don't think one device is subjectively better overall than another. It depends on the use case of what you're going to use that device for, and if it does that use case better than something else. Silence.
Sorry about that. I can't text, think, and type at the same time.
We all know you're a great multitasker, Michael.
I stink at multitasking. Chris, that's a great question, man. Let's go to the next one. Peter, do you guys ever have arguments on who has the better headphone? I don't.
Not yet.
No, because I've got like, these are crappy ones here. Ryan sent me some really awesome ones here. Man, Ryan could have a $15,000 pair of headphones. I could care less. I mean, that'd be cool, you know?
You got those 800s on, don't you, Ryan?
Right now, yeah.
Yeah, those are nice.
I sold my LCD 5s.
Here we go. Let's sport them real quick. Let me see. Ooh, those look sexy, man.
Kind of a gold standard on Ryan's head there.
These headphones are kind of an audiophile standard. Then you got the Sundaras rocking on Michael's head.
It's bad when the headphones look better than the person wearing them.
But the Sundaras are a great.
And Jonathan? Oh, let's see, bro.
I probably got the cheap ones of the group. These are
Philips, right?
They charge. Yep.
But those are still great headphones. I mean, they're very well regarded in the industry, and they do a tremendous job.
Like I said, I rock these for like $20 for a long time.
No, we don't get in fights or argue about any of that stuff.
They're fun, man. There's too much. We try to celebrate each other's whatever.
And ruin each other's wallets.
That's true. Now that is a different subject for a different show. Laverne says, is there a sound bar that can be used with an existing 5.1 home theater to create Atmos? My question is, why would you want to do that? Is there a sound bar that, so let's say you have 5.1 speakers and you're wanting to add a sound bar just to do Atmos? I would think
don't do it.
A better option, worst case scenario, a better option than a sound bar would be like dedicated up-firing speakers. And again, that would be my last resort I guess
we all know Jonathan really likes bouncy house speakers.
Well, I'm not saying they're the best, but if he's considering a sound bar for the bouncy, I would go dedicated speaker for bouncy.
Yes.
But you know what I'm saying? I mean, that's what I'm saying. I'm looking at tiers. So to me, here would be the sound bar with bouncy. I don't even know if you can really integrate that with a 5.1 home theater system.
I don't think you can.
You know what I mean?
You could do something like Martin Logan makes a passive 3-channel speaker. It's got
it's not up-firing though, right?
No, that's what you could use to integrate. But I don't know of any sound bar.
So I don't think the sound bar would be a good thing. I would go next step up from that would be the dedicated up-firing speakers from whoever. Pretty much every company is making those. I would recommend even going beyond that if you can, with either on ceiling or in ceiling speakers. So
some sound bars, if the room is appropriate, can do a decent job.
Yeah,
but there's a lot of stuff that has to go right for that.
Yeah,
there's some sound bars that are real, like Sennheiser's sound bar is like $3,000, but it's good.
For what you guys heard those at those trade shows? I haven't really experienced in those high-end sound bars. Have you heard them?
I heard some. Yeah, they're okay.
In an appropriate environment with flat ceilings, they can do an okay job. I mean, my sound bar in my living room before the Perlistons were in there were fine, given that it was a living room and it was just kind of I wasn't expecting much out of it. It was just giving me a better TV experience. That's what my expectation was. So as long as you're attempting to get that out of a sound bar, I think you're going to be great. But if you're trying to compete with a home theater, like we talked about earlier, spend a little bit more because you're going to do it anyway. Like it's going to happen. So try and buy used, spend a little bit more, wait a little bit and save, and then make that decision or the leap and do it right the first time instead of just trying to kludge things together, because the kludging in my experience, almost always ends up costing you more time and money in the long run than doing it right the first time.
Yeah.
The kludging.
And I think the biggest thing is, like I said, to answer your question specifically, I'm not sure that there's a sound bar that you can integrate with a 5.1 to do like just for the purpose of Atmos.
Your delays are going to be real tricky trying to do that.
Do it right.
A disaster anyway. Without
do it right or do it twice is kind of my motto.
We need a shirt like that. Needs to be a shirt right there. Do it right or do it twice.
All right, we'll do that for M-Wave. All right, let's go to Brendan. Brendan says Arkham AV41 or Marantz AV10. I'm not familiar with those.
The Arkhams are typically like they're made in the same factory as the JBL synthesis stuff. I think it's going to have Dirac, but the AV10 will have Dirac eventually.
So any preference there? Any recommendation? I just haven't had any experience with either one.
I'd say Marantz.
Give a quality this or that. Jonathan, have you had any
I don't have very much experience with Arkham at all.
Yeah.
Marantz is a pretty tried and true product, so I'd probably by default go there. It looks like they don't have a 41 review on ASR, but his 40 review has a headless Panther, which is not a good review. So, you with any of these things, you got to really look at the individual model too, because Arkham might have really stepped up their game and said, "Hey, we don't want that again. We're going to do a great job this next go round," and it could be a phenomenal product. So I'm not gonna say anything negative about it. I don't know anything about it.
Sure. Yeah, I think we'll stay away from that one.
I think Marantz generally and Denon generally, that Sound United company, has a very mature, polished product with very few bugs. And so
they just work, man.
And that Cinema AV10 is going to be, looks really good. Expensive, but it looks really good.
For sure. We're going to try to blow through as many of these as we can. JP Boy, appreciate the $2 super chat. NX5 versus NX7 for $1,000 more. So he's saying I can get an NX7 for $1,000 more than I can get an NX5. Would that be worth it on a 142-inch 2.35 screen?
I'm going to say no.
Law of diminishing returns?
No, there's just too many golden NX5s.
Too many golden NX5s. What do you mean?
NX5s, in my opinion, had a tendency to hit above their weight, and I don't think the extra money is going to be worth it, especially if you're not
like the law of diminishing return. Like, okay, is he going to see that $1,000 performance?
No, are you going to use the color filter that the NX7 gives you? I guess is a big question.
Probably not, because you'll lose too much brightness.
Yeah.
So your question, and I think where Ryan's going with that is, you're probably looking used, right? Because $1,000 more is probably used.
This is definitely used.
Ask your sellers if there's any bright corners and go with the one that doesn't have bright corners. That'd be my take, because that's an annoyance, and that's not universally true. It's lottery.
Yeah.
Your NX7 might have bright corners, your NX5 may not.
Yeah.
From my perspective, and Ryan's probably seen some of the same ones I have around here in the Kansas City group, there's 3 or 4 people with NX7s, and there's one guy with NX5. Now 2 guys with NX5. The NX5 that one of the guys purchased new looks better than all 3 of the NX7s. Like,
interesting.
Lottery, whatever. They're so close that it almost comes down to lottery at that point on the panel.
So might be able to save you some money there, man. Go spend $1,000 and get you a better subwoofer or
room treatments.
Room treatment, a lot of different things. So cool. Adam, great question here. What is the best location for a sound diffuser? Like most I see are located on the back wall. So we talked a little bit earlier about absorption panels, and but what about diffusers?
Depends on the room.
So how walls are fine for them, back walls are fine for them. Either.
How best can you find out like where to put those?
Trial and error, man. Put them on the wall. That's what Sheldon's done. He's done a lot of time with them. He moves them all over the place, listens to the same songs, and sees what he likes.
That's really funny.
Unless you got there are acoustic programs that can calculate this out and give you the exact precise location. But I don't know. I don't have the knowledge to run that stuff. And unless you do, if you're asking the question, you don't either. So unless you do, you're going to be trial and error on it.
Well, and I don't know how much I buy into necessarily believing when an acoustic piece of software puts out, because that's assuming that everybody's the same. And I don't know that what I like is going to be what you like. And maybe you want a more lively room. Maybe you don't. So I think what Jonathan said, giving Sheldon as an example, is move it around, sit it on the floor, sit it on a chair, see what sounds best, and then make your determination from there. Because then not only are you seeing what works best in your room, but you're also gaining the experience and the knowledge for when you do this again, that you've already cut off all that. You've already read the book. You already know what you're doing, and you're going to be able to do it better the second time. And probably redo what you did the first time.
Alpha Mo Eliza has a great comment in there saying acousticians differ on where they would recommend to put things, and so trial and error is the right answer.
That's a great point.
Yeah, Brian, one of the KC guys recently has done that same thing. He got 3 different acoustic plans, like kind of just rough draft, like idea concepts, and they were all very different from 3 well-established acoustic engineers for the same space. So good point, Alpha. I
like it, man. Robbie, appreciate the $5 super chat. What's your take on ASR's don't buy for the X3800 due to the Synad? Did we get caught up too much in numbers? Didn't we talk about that?
Yes.
So,
Robbie, I think our take, we talked about this on the last live stream, is that's kind of heavy-handed to say that, because like Gene from Audioholics had put out there that human beings don't really hear much over like 70 dB typically Synad. So, and that's, unless you're just listening to silence and you're going up to the speaker to put your ear next to it. But in music playback, when there's audio in the room, you don't hear much over 70. Maybe a golden ear hears a little higher than that. So to say, hey, we're not going to recommend this because it's at 85, actually feels a little irresponsible to me.
E-pin, come on. How big is it? That's what this is all about. A measuring contest.
Now it's objective, it's a benchmark, it's realistic, it's possible to, it's repeatable, but it's not audible, it's not human audible. So let's account for what is.
And we went for, like, we chose benchmark at M-Wave last year because of them ruling the Synad list, because we were trying to take away variables from people being able to say, oh, well, the noise floor, oh, this or that. So in that context, absolutely. Or if you're wanting to just say and have confidence that what you're hearing is what should be delivered, I get it. But law of diminishing returns is, how much money are you willing to throw at this problem? And at what point does it stop mattering? Like I went with my Buckeye amps, and I had pro amps that were probably around the 70, 75 Synad rating, and they did a great job. I just got kind of irritated because I listen pretty loud. So if things are up really high with those amps, I could hear some hiss when things weren't on, and I didn't like that. So I couldn't sell them as a dealer. So I went a different direction with HypeX and Purify. But for most people, it depends on your situation. But I agree with Jonathan. I don't think that's
well.
Really,
I think we have some pretty good objective data on that just from a small operation, and I've done it 4 times, and we've done it together a couple times, you and I. Ryan, where you bought the benchmark amp to test it, to put this all to the test, and we mixed in a Behringer A800, and we mixed in a Crown 1502, and we mixed in some 1980s refurb amp from Hafler, and darned if anyone could tell the difference between 118 dB synapse score. And the lowest one that's on that list was like 70. I'm somewhere around 74, I think, if I remember right, Ryan, for that Crown or for that A800. So you got like that huge gap, right? The best amp on ASR, 118 dB, the benchmark, versus a generic pro audio amp, and nobody in the room, fast switching.
And a blind test.
Double blind test. Double blind.
Wow.
We had his wife make the connections after we balanced it up, so that none of us even knew.
Nice.
And then I was doing the switching, and the guys were all in the room. Nobody could tell a darn thing. So
he actually, and I've told this story multiple times, he was turning the same damn amp on and off, and we thought it was a different one every time. Like, oh, we can hear the difference. And he's just sitting over there in the corner going, ha 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 ha. We thought it was a different amp, and it was the same one getting turned on and off. And that right there is a perfect example of how screwed up your brain can make these tests. I mean, it is, your brain is your first enemy. It is the thing that is going to make this all an epic disaster in what you're trying to do. So figure out how much money you want to throw at it. I think HypeX and Purify are great money for performance options. And actually, they're some of the best rated amps as far as Synad score, but they don't cost as much as a lot of them do. Like Buckeye is phenomenal for his price for performance. So if you want to have the best of both, I think that's a great place to start. But don't go chasing that rabbit down the rabbit hole.
Not everything that you can measure can be heard. So I'll leave you with that. Appreciate that, guys. Brandon, do you guys have any experience with DefTech BP line? They're like half off everywhere the last few weeks. So I picked up some BP 9060s. Very curious about y'all's opinion of them. I'm wanting to say I heard those at Life of Bliss. He's got a pair of those, and DefTech's a different type of sound because
wasn't the guy at M-Wave that you came over that was bought the 2 houses? He called himself Fluffy.
Yeah.
He had a bunch of DefTechs,
maybe,
and he was really happy with them. And some of them are actually very, very well reviewed.
Yeah, it's just a different sound. I mean, DefTech has always had I think they use like some reflective, like speakers firing in different directions. Don't they have some of that in some of their speakers? I'm not as familiar with that particular model, but it just depends on like how much reflectivity you want from a speaker. It amazes me how many times people on my channel will buy something and they'll say, "Man, I can't wait for your review of them." I'm thinking, why? You already bought them. If you like them and you know, or whatever it is, if it's subwoofer or speakers, man, really, if you're excited about it, dude, that's all that really matters, man. And so I say crank them up. If you like them, keep them. If you don't like them, find a speaker that sounds better to your ears and is a better performer in your room and in your setup.
Yep.
So
well said.
Neo says, "Hey guys, what is the best Blu-ray player? No 3D needed." And I always kind of stay away from the best because that's always subjective. But what is a really great Blu-ray player that doesn't need 3D? What can we get? What can we recommend for him?
If he wants HDR tone mapping for a projector, the Panasonic UB420 is kind of the gold standard, or the 820.
Yep.
If you want Dolby Vision. And the Oppos are really popular, although they're deceased at this point as a parent company.
Right.
A lot of people like their Sony players. Ultimately, unless you want something specific like that HDR tone mapping functionality, what difference does it really make? I got a LG cheapo from Walmart for one of our TVs that one of those sites reviewed and said it was one of the best ones they ever did because it's just digital, right? It's just putting it out there and processing. It's not doing any analog conversion. Had less noise, digital noise, than some of the other ones that were way more expensive. So since it's digital, it's probably not that important to worry about unless you want a specific feature.
Right. Jay Cameron uses a PS3. I'd probably take a step up from that. Now, honestly, though, the PS3 had a great.
PS3 was one of the best.
It was good at the time.
At the time, it was the fastest, and that's why I kept it. I didn't even have a dedicated one, but it had the fastest boot up time out of all of them that were out there. Even the $1,000 players, man, it was crazy. So, Matt has a question here. Running a Pioneer LX VX 305 Elite AVR, all Emotiva speakers, B fronts, B1 plus sides, A2 heights, A1 heights with a C1 center, and an S12 sub surround. Seem too quiet. Oh, we already hit that.
Yeah. This is coming back to that same question, but now we know the rear surrounds. We had asked him what the rear speakers were.
Okay.
So which one are the rear speakers here? Plus
B1s
plus for sides.
The B1 pluses are the sides, then the A2 and A1s are the heights.
So, I don't know if Emotiva is super sensitive to begin with.
I'm looking up the B1 plus. I feel like I might have seen this question on the forums even.
Okay.
So view specs here. It says they are.
Feel free to share your screen, Jonathan.
Sure. StreamYard, present, share screen.
That way we all can look at the same time.
Oh, he's using Bouncy House
up for
heights.
Okay, so he's got, and I'll make this larger, I suppose.
Yep.
So it's got a 5 1/4 inch driver,
and
it's a ribbon tweeter.
Those shouldn't be quiet.
Where's the actual specs? That's the specs.
No, there's got to be.
Here we go.
Yeah, see, I missed it too.
All right, 86 dB sensitive, which is probably a lie. It's probably more like 3 or 4 dB lower than that typically.
That's not
70 watt power handling.
Ooh.
That's not a super capable speaker. So if you got a big room, this goes back to our question earlier. If you got a big room with a lot of throw distance, you're probably just out of speaker, man. You can do the math, and Youthman's done it before on his channel, where you can figure out how much watts it takes to get at what power to your seat, and then you drop off about 10 dB for distance in the average room. These things are not going to be hitting reference. You're just not. You're not going to do it. With
well, and if you're pushing them too hard, you may be mistaking quiet for distortion.
And if they're in, what was his AVR?
Pioneer LX VX 305.
Pioneers aren't traditionally known as being a very powerful AVR. They're not traditionally known that. I don't know anything about that particular model, but just as a general stereotype, you might not have a very powerful AVR, and you do have a very lightweight surround. So in a small room,
it's kind of a combination of things.
Yeah, but it all depends on your expectation. You might be somebody who was not expecting reference level sound, and so it might totally be fine.
Well, he's not satisfied with this because he says it seems too quiet for him. So at least he's wanting more than what it's providing.
A valid test would be to take one of the B2s and replace it and put it up front. Oh, you have B2s up front. Take one of the B1s and put it up front with the B2s. See if it's loud enough. And then that's going to tell you if it's a power or speaker running out of.
You want to put that back up, Jonathan?
I'm going to put the B2 up to see what that is, because he said he has those in the front. So these are 220 and these are 500. What are we talking here? What's the difference? 6.5, 86 dB, 125 continuous.
So not a lot of difference there.
Double.
No, I mean these are not really meant. Not even these. They're not really meant to go to reference levels.
But it's still double what the B1s were.
Yes. Yeah, 70 to 125, close to. Same spec here, though. It's probably still a lie. It's probably less than that. Recommended amplifier power.
Jonathan calls it, it's still a lie.
Well, they do. Liar! They spec sheet all the time on this stuff.
Liar! I'm just picturing the Grinch when he says that. Jonathan in all green.
That's funny.
Your first stop is like I think Ryan said it earlier. Take your SPL meter on your phone.
Yeah.
And just see if you're at 75 dB with your test tones on your receiver, and if you are there, then you might be running out of speaker. Ryan's next suggestion of switching the speakers around is probably pretty good, because you could see, hey, now are my front quiet and my rears are plenty loud.
Another thing that I'd like to know is, do your ears hurt?
Tinnitus?
Well, not tinnitus, but distortion, right? Because a lot of times, like if you're at Jonathan, you've brought this up. If you're at a rock concert, it's way loud. But your ears don't really hurt while you're there. They may hurt the next day from sound pressure, but they don't hurt while you're there. It's stupid loud, but they don't hurt because there's not a lot of distortion, if any distortion. So if your ears are hurting when you're watching something and you're wincing, a lot of times that is an indication that there is distortion present in what you're listening to, and you're overdriving something.
I don't think that's his problem.
No, but
surround
something to wonder.
Yeah, I think like the guys are saying.
Some people mistake like their center channel from not being able to understand it as it being too quiet, but in a lot of times it's distortion. And if you have a clearer center with a better signal, if you're not overdriving it, clears it up sometimes. Just something else to consider.
Sure.
Do you have any old, big, huge garage sale type speakers laying around that you could put in the rears just to try for a while? Like, and if you don't, go to a garage sale and pick up a pair of speakers for $25.
$10, $20.
Like, an old,
when in doubt,
big
more
pair
speakers.
that somebody had in their living room from Sears or something. It doesn't matter.
That's
exactly. Just to see.
Yeah.
It'd be worth it to test as another avenue.
There you go. Rex has a question here. Rex says, I'm new to Pro amps and have 3 Crown DSI 1000 amps. I plan to connect the Anthem AVM70. Where do I start with the gain knobs on the amps and processor volume control? Don't want to blow up anything. So with Crown amps, so you guys are a lot more familiar with Pro amps than I am. My understanding, this is what they told me a long time ago. I borrowed one. I just wanted to put some more power to my speakers just to see. So I was a youth pastor for like 12 years of this one church. And so I just snagged a couple of my Crown amplifiers from the youth room, brought them into my home to crank it up. And I was, at first, it was really disappointing. And I reached out to somebody and they said, well, what you have to do, you actually turn those wide open on the gain of the actual amps. Is that true?
This is Jonathan.
Jonathan, you're not muted.
Hey, Jonathan.
He's on the phone.
Okay.
So what I would do in this particular situation is I would set your AVR to whatever you want reference volume to be, and then adjust the gain knobs accordingly. Like turn your gain knobs all the way down to off or 0, and then adjust your AVR to 5 or 0, and then turn up the gain knob, and you need an SPL meter for this, and adjust to where you want reference volume or max volume to be, and then do that accordingly with those gain knobs, and then make your changes from there.
Okay.
But some amps, as you said, you do need them wide open. Just depends on the design. But for my pro amps, like my QSCs, my Behringers,
so you don't run all of those. Okay. So that may have been just particular to that amplifier that I was running. Kevin says that Youth Man and guys, have any of you get to experience the Emotiva M1? Oh my golly. Let me start over. Kevin Garner has a great question. Youth Man and guys, have any of you had the opportunity to have 3? Oh my gosh, whatever.
Have any of you 3 gotten to experience the Emotiva MC1 processor? It is not well regarded.
Yeah, I've reviewed the RMC1, and it was really super buggy when I reviewed it. So I have not. So I'm going to keep going since we don't have any experience on that one. Brian says, builds with subs behind transparent screen. How close is too close for subs behind the screen to avoid movement? Brian, my answer to you, I get this question literally asked all the time. Michael, with big, massive 18-inch drivers, and even when I had the clip speakers, there were 4 15s behind my screen. And one of the main questions everybody asked was, does that cause your screen to move? Heck yeah, it causes my screen to move, man. Those are big, massive speakers. And so if you're moving air and pressure, a screen isn't really difficult to move. So regardless of whether you put it close or a little bit, even a good distance from it, is probably still going to shake the screen. But here's the reality. When I had the lights on, I could see the screen moving. And the screen, basically, think about this. My projector is 16 feet from the screen. The screen is moving, maybe a half an inch. That half an inch isn't going to change the visual acuity. It's not going to change the focus of the projector at all. It's such a small change. And not one time have I ever noticed it moving with the lights off. And so I've actually, like I said, I've got a dedicated video on that. Search for Youth Man, something like screen shake or screen move or something like that. You'll find the video. But I think you're going to get screen shake no matter what if you've got capable subwoofers. Ryan?
If your screen's moving, maybe move it back a little bit. That's
I don't think
it's subjective. It's just subjective. It's if you can't see it when the lights are off, I wouldn't worry about it.
No.
If it bothers you, move your subs back.
Yeah. Yeah. And I don't have the ability to move mine back any further. I mean, they're pretty much back as far as they can, and they still move the screen. But like I said, you're not going to see it when the lights go out, so it doesn't impact the image at all. But great question, man. JP Boy says, I'm revamping my theater. Did we do this one? Just want to make sure.
No.
Okay. I'm revamping my theater in the basement, and I have a carpet, and that's about all for acoustics. So there is a slap echo. Should I wait for all acoustics or run mini DSP now? Great question, man. I'm a fan of, it depends on, are you going to buy more acoustic treatment? I mean, you said with the slap echo, you need more treatment.
Is there any harm though in running mini DSP?
No, you can still, and the good thing, you can save, a different configuration. If you got the mini DSP, like a 2x4 HD, you can run save 4 different profiles. But my thought is, if you need room acoustics, yeah, definitely you can go ahead and run mini DSP now, because maybe you're having to save up to buy, so absolutely make it as best as you can with the mini DSP. But just know when you get, that's not going to fix your issues. It's not going to fix
No.
a slap echo.
I think
So you're
you
gonna
run
have
your
to go.
room EQ now, and then when you do get
Mhm.
more acoustic panels, run
do
it
it
again,
again.
because you're just
100%.
gaining knowledge and you're gaining
Yeah.
experience. So
Yeah.
the more you can do it, the better you're going to be at it overall. It may be a little bit more of a time sink, but I would do it now and then for sure.
Yep. I agree, man. Very cool. Hey, I just saw Andy pop in the chat, man. Good to see you, Andy. Andy's a local guy, and he's working on building his home theater. So super excited for him, man. With Jonathan's help. I hate that Jonathan's not able to hear this, but I'll tell him after the show. But I was asking Jonathan some advice on projectors, and Andy ended up going on Jonathan's advice, and he was looking at one of the ones before the 5040. Forget the model, but
like the 3800.
Andy, let us know in the chat. I'm not sure what model it was, but anyway, he ended up getting the 5040. He said, dude, it's awesome. He loves it. So he spent a little bit extra, kind of like you were saying, Ryan. He spent a little bit extra money, didn't cut the corner, didn't compromise, got what was recommended, and he's super, super happy with that. He said it was the 5020 at first that he was looking at. And Jonathan, he just knew all the specs. He's like, man, this and this and this and this, and this is better on the 5040. So definitely super cool there, man. So Jay Cameron says, actually, let me do it this way. How do I add an amp and still do room correction? I add an old Macintosh 2105 to my Onkyo RZ830 and volume matching was no good. I'm not sure what his question is, Ryan.
Maybe he's talking about he added the amp and he couldn't volume match the rest of the speakers.
I'm not
sure. You shouldn't
sure.
have a problem if you're running through pre-outs. Sometimes you'll run into like a maximum amount of adjustment in your AVR or pre-pro from the pre-out. So maybe he just doesn't have enough adjustment. Maybe that's what he's talking about.
Yeah, Jay Cameron.
That's about all you can do.
I'm not super sure what the question was there, so I'm going to keep going because we still got plenty. Mike Ortiz says, does the HTP-1 do nearly all of what a Storm audio processor would? Would I get like 80% the value, features, etc., going with the HTP-1?
I don't really have a ton of experience with the HTP-1. The benefit
I reviewed it. It was pretty solid. I mean, I didn't have any hiccups with it, no bugs.
I've heard it's pretty good.
I've heard some home theaters that have used it. Like I've done home theater tours and they had it.
The benefit of this Storm
I like it.
Is that you continually get updates. Like they're getting exclusive access to spatial for like the first year. It's upgradable. So you buy into the chassis and then you can continually upgrade it year over year whenever there's something that you want. Add channels, make your theater bigger, whatever. It has the most taps and filters available out of anything in the industry for room correction with DIRAC or manual EQ. It's just it's the next evolution. Like if you have the HTP-1, the Storm is going to be the next one up. 80% of the way there, I mean, that's subjective. I don't know. Maybe. It depends on what you're looking for. Maybe there's something specific that you're looking for is something that only Storm is going to be able to deliver. I'm a believer in not wanting to rebuy, and Storm is just the end for me.
True.
I mean, worry about it again. But it's expensive.
I mean, there is a big difference. I mean, you're talking what the HTP-1, I don't know what it is now. Is it about $4,000? Maybe.
It doesn't come with live bass control. The HTP-1 doesn't.
Yeah, but you're talking $400.
I know. I'm just
yes. I mean,
you're looking at $4 or $5,000.
Yeah, I mean, there's still a big difference there. So, yeah, it really just depends on, what you're looking for, what your budget is. If you're looking, buy once, cry once, and you'll never really need to upgrade, dude, hit the Storm. I don't know, man. I think there is a lot of value that the HTP-1, somebody mentioned, I think it was, so SRW 1000 says HTP-1 is $4,000. And he also mentioned earlier HTP-1 has BEQ built in, if that's big. Important to you,
We keep pestering Storm for that. I think Storm's going to get that eventually.
Yeah. Super cool, man. Appreciate the question, Mike. Raghav says, should I consider a new Marantz cinema series with Dirac? That's kind of a...
They're not getting... Dirac on the Marantz got pushed back to 2024. So...
Wow. So I didn't even hear that.
Maybe.
2024?
I'm pretty sure.
A year?
Uh-huh.
Holy cow, man. Okay. Interesting. I didn't know it was going to be that long. I thought it was going to be this year. Whoa. All right. So definitely that might be something you want to consider. Neo says, okay, we already did that one.
Sorry, guys, for making you watch me eat my McFlurry.
You're good, man.
That was delicious.
Tiki Tom says, how does the MadVR Extreme processor connect to amps, as I didn't see any XLR outputs? Great question.
Doesn't.
It's a video processor. So
the MadVR is going to sit in your signal chain, typically after your AVR or pre-pro. So the AVR and pre-pro still exist. The AVR or pre then sends out its video signal into the MadVR Extreme, and then it feeds the display.
Mm-hmm. Good question there, man. Joe and Tell, I haven't seen him in the chat, so he may not be still with us, but he says, what do you guys think of I always want to say REL. I don't know why. What do you guys think of REL being against DSP? So they don't like to use DSP in their subwoofers, apparently. I like DSP. I think you can accomplish a lot with DSP.
I'm not a huge... I don't really get what they're talking about. I think you can overdo DSP, but as long as you're doing it correctly, I think this is just something that REL uses to set themselves apart.
Yeah.
And says, "Oh, look at the rest of the industry. Look at what they're doing, and we're not doing it, and this is why we're better." It's just a marketing exercise for them, in my opinion.
Yeah. And I kind of feel that way by that line level input and making them sound like your main speakers. I don't buy that, honestly. So, but that's just me. Exponoid says, is there any way to use, oh man, that's the old question, right? Okay, perfect. Redneck Tech 70 says, I have two PB 1000s and a SVS satellites. Rest of the way around, including Atmos. I do have a C1 Emotiva, a center channel. I'm seriously thinking of switching to Emotiva, a good upgrade. My vote, I've only heard one Emotiva speaker system, and I just wasn't that impressed. It wasn't what I was looking for in the sound. I've heard some SVS speakers, and I really like SVS. I reviewed the SVS Ultras. I've reviewed a bunch of their subwoofers. Definitely like their subwoofers. They're great. The satellites I haven't heard in particular, other than the what is it? The Prime Wireless? No, not Prime Wireless. What is it? I'm trying to think. Basically, like their Atmos speaker, but it's not like a bookshelf speaker, like what you're talking about. So, I mean, again, it's always difficult to tell somebody what is better, because some people are going to listen to that Emotiva system, and it's going to provide everything that they need. Volume level, clarity, detail, the sound signature, they love it. And then some people are going to listen to it and go, it's not for me. Some people are going to listen to Ryan's, Martin, Logan's. They're pretty expensive. They're high end, but they may listen to it and go, you know what? There's something about it that it doesn't check the boxes for me. And they may go a totally different direction. That's cool. As much as possible, man, I encourage you guys to listen to as many speakers as you can. Ryan mentioned it earlier. We're putting on an event literally in about 6 or 7 months.
7 months.
Yeah. So we're going to be doing an event called M-Wave, Midwest AV Experience. And one of the things we love doing there is providing you with opportunities to hear speakers in person, but also even to compare some speakers. Like, how does this speaker compare side by side with this speaker? So we'd love to have you join us.
Objectively. This year, during that comparison, what I'm going to try and do is I'm going to blind everybody to them. So I'm going to shine laser pointers in your eyes so you can't see anything. Now I'm going to try and put them behind some either some acoustically transparent screens or some spandex, so you can't see the speakers, and make it even more objective than last year.
Nice.
Because we believe that objective
as best you
research and comparisons is the best way to determine what you want in your listening or viewing experience. If you allow subjectivity and bias to introduce itself, it just leads to abnormal and irrational outcomes. And that's not anything that we want in this hobby. We want everybody to have as solid a foundation as they can. And that's what M-Wave's all about. So Redneck, on your question, I don't really consider that an upgrade. I encourage you to listen to some things. I think SVS brings a good product. They know exactly what they're doing as far as what they're marketing and what they're offering. So I would stick with them and then try and listen to things, try and meet some people around in your area. If you have a true Best Buy Magnolia Theater, they're decent places. If you're in the Midwest, Nebraska Furniture Mart is a great place to be able to listen to some stuff. So I would encourage you to try and listen to as many options as you possibly can, but also try and find some people around you. Try and find local theaters to be able to see what you like, what you don't like. Or if none of that is available, you can always buy from Crutchfield and then listen to some things and return it. But I'm not a huge fan of what Emotiva brings to the table as far as their speakers.
Yeah, exactly. Like I like their processor.
Like their amps.
The processor sounds great when it works good. Their amps, I have no problem with. Even their basic series, I reviewed some of those.
I think it's great.
So, but yeah, their speakers, they're just not for me. Going off of a question here, Rocksteady asked, will we include DIY sound group
if we can get them?
Yeah, I mean, really, it's about whatever companies are willing to either send the product or come and be there with us. I mean, we're glad to have them. I'd love to have DIY Sound Group. I think they offer an incredible value. I've reviewed one of my favorite home theaters that I've toured was a massive DIY Sound Group system here in Florida, and that was awesome. So I mean, we'd love to have them. And then another question, no, I'm sorry. Steven says, do we have tentative time frame? Not even tentative, my brother. We got the time frame. So right here's the dates, July 14th through the 16th. You can check out all the details, midwestavexperience.com. A lot of the information on the website is still old information, so I've got to get that updated. But we do have the venue, we do have the date, and we're ready to rock and roll. So Ryan and I are going to be meeting this week, talking about some different things like VIP options. And so best thing to do is just join the newsletter on the Midwest AV Experience website. And that way, as soon as we have information, I'll send that out to you and notify you guys. But man, we'd love to have you come out this year. It's going to be bigger than last year. We're going to try some new things and just have some fun, man. I really, really believe that what we're providing at M-Wave is really unlike anything that I've ever experienced at any trade show. And we want that to be that way. We're not looking to have 15,000 people come through. That's not the goal. The goal is to have a community of people that can come and listen to some objective comparisons, to view some objective comparisons with picture images like projectors and maybe even TVs and ultra short throws and some different things. So we'd love to have you out, but that'd be awesome, man. Joey, have a great one, man. Appreciate you stopping by. So we got a few more questions here. We'll go through these quick as we can.
Did that one already.
All right. I think I was trying to turn it off. There we go. Mark T says, I'm in the process of buying theater speakers. Is JBL 70J-1 a good speaker? I'm not familiar with that one.
That's Jonathan's.
Okay. So
yeah, they're great.
Yeah, dude. Jonathan's got a cool setup, dude. If you're ever in the Casey area, hit Jonathan up. He's got an incredible system. Cool.
It still applies. Listen to things if you can before you buy them, because while I love the 70J1s, they don't do nearly as well with imaging. Right. So
because they're 150 degree dispersion.
Yeah. So you're just going to want to determine if that's going to suit your experience well. In Jonathan's, it does very, very well. For what he primarily uses his system for, it does phenomenally. I personally do a lot of 2-channel listening in my theater. I really like directed output. So Per Listen and Martin Logan Electrostats, those are my jam. it's everybody's different. Highly encourage everybody to listen to as many things as they can, and then
100%.
make a determination based on that.
Yeah, absolutely. Jay Moore, appreciate it, man. Don't just think about it, man.
Just go.
Get ready. It's gonna be awesome.
It is awesome.
We're gonna have fun, man. We had a blast last year. We got a lot of great feedback from the people that attended, and really the desires are, you know, because we're enthusiasts ourselves. You know, Ryan is deep into this hobby. I'm deep into this hobby, and we're just passionate about it, man. What can we do that would create the coolest experience for people just to come out and get to know some people, check out some really interesting things that you really can't get anywhere else. So yeah, so don't be thinking about it, man. Just get on it. He said he'll make it happen. That's awesome. So
do it.
Super cool, man. We'd love to see you. All right, let's see here. Thomas Seegers says, can I use on-wall speakers for height speakers? 100%. I don't see anything wrong with on-wall speakers.
I got bookshelves mounted in my ceiling.
Your room doesn't know whether it's an in-wall, an on-wall. It's really, how does that speaker perform? If it's a good performing speaker, doesn't matter if it's in-wall, on-wall, bookshelf, tower. I mean, I've seen guys use massive speakers for
I don't
Atmos,
like in-ceiling speakers.
You know? So
I don't like them. They're directed. They're non-directive. You're outside the good frequency response ranges most of the time. I just don't like them. So,
Yeah.
I mean, Jonathan's got all like speakers. He's got 70 J1s mounted to his ceiling. I got bookshelves and center channels mounted to my ceiling.
Yep.
It's all about what you're trying to do with them and what makes the most sense to accomplish that goal.
Yeah, eventually I want to go to the 110 JTRs, but that's going to be a little bit. All right, let's look at the last couple here. I guess we got a couple, probably about what? Another 8. So there's 8 more questions. So Britt says, wanting a dedicated theater and having it designed like Yates or Erskine design it, but would hate to call them to find that it's over budget. What can one expect to pay them for a room design? I don't know this for certain, but I believe I've heard like 20K starting.
It depends on how in depth you're wanting, but that's probably about right.
I mean, I'm guessing it's at minimum of 20, you know. So if you want Keith Yates, I mean, he's definitely sought after. So there's a great bunch of great guys out there that can design. Keith Yates, if you got the money, man, definitely he's on up there on the recommended tier, well known in the community. Chris Contreras says 10 by 19 by 8 foot room, basics 3. So that's like a 3-channel AVR or 3-channel amp with a
Yamaha RZ50 or an Onkyo.
It's Onkyo, right? Onkyo RZ50 7.1.4. It's got Polk speakers, side surrounds, in ceilings. I hear the R700s produce a lot of bass. Do you think I still need a subwoofer? I think for home theater, you always need a subwoofer. And if you can have more than one subwoofer, even better. If you have more than one seat. If you have one seat, you may be able to get away with one subwoofer. I think you can
get away with it. Sure.
I think you can get a good. Why wouldn't you be able, if you have if you had one single JTR,
you can localize it.
Not if you have a, no.
Yeah.
No.
I can localize mine.
I can't mine. I don't know where it's coming.
Yours are right behind your screen.
But I can't tell that they're right behind my screen.
Oh, well, I can.
My brain doesn't go, oh, there's the subwoofers right back there.
Yeah.
I just feel bass around me.
You know, if you put one in a corner, I bet you're going to be able to localize it.
Think so?
Okay. Your body's going to be able to feel where that sound's coming. You won't be able to hear it more than likely, but you're going to be able to feel where that's coming from. So
either way, get multiple subwoofers.
Yes.
But I think ideally, yes.
My recommendation in this, going down this pathway, is always buy the biggest, baddest sub that you can afford now, and then buy another one later. Don't split that in half and buy 2. Buy the biggest, baddest one you can get now, and then get another one of those later on down the road.
Yeah, I agree, man. So yeah, so definitely you're going to need a subwoofer, and I think that is need.
You may not know you need a subwoofer.
Yeah,
but you need a subwoofer because once you experience a theater with a good sub, you're going to be ruined.
So here's a personal illustration of how I know I need a subwoofer. So I have Klipsch RF7 version 3s. When I first got them in for review, what is that, 4 years ago, I had them in the theater room. I had my subwoofers, had the center channel, had the whole system set up. And I was like, you know what? I've been hearing guys say like, you know, these things are killer, and which they are. They got dual 10-inch drivers. So I'm thinking, what would this sound like running full range, no subwoofer? And it did a really good job, honestly. It did decent. And then I don't remember what I was playing, but I promise you, it hit some notes that speaker did not like, and it sounded like doo-doo. The reality is most speakers, not all, but most speakers, even with big woofers, aren't designed to handle 30 hertz, 25 hertz, 20 hertz, 15 hertz, 17 hertz. And heaven forbid, you know, something like 10 hertz come through them. It's like they're just not designed for that. They're not going to be able to reproduce that. Use a subwoofer because that's what it's designed to do. And I just always recommend at least get one that'll play down to 20 hertz. The lower, the better. You know, if you can get one down to 15 hertz or 10 hertz, awesome. But at least get down to 20 hertz, because if you got one that's playing down to 30, 35 hertz, I know some guys, they'll say, hey, can I use a pro audio subwoofer? You can. Most of them just don't dig low enough for me, you know, for home theater. So I think, Chris, get you a subwoofer, man. You will not regret it. That's where the action is. That's where the excitement is. It's going to rock your world, man. Return to normalcy. I like that name, man. People are touting Class D amps lately. Man, they've been touting Class D for probably 5 years. Yeah, but I heard Class H has far less distortion. Is this true? I'm not sure the difference between D and H.
Class H has two, I think it's 2 transformers. Class H is effectively two amps built into one.
Mm-hmm.
The QSC CX1102 is a Class H, and you can hear it flip over when it needs the extra power.
Interesting.
The
so
Class
do you know
D's,
about distortion though?
It does okay. I mean, it's like in the 70s or 80s.
Mm-hmm.
The Class Ds that I have, my purifiers run circles around it.
Mm.
No comparison. I think Class Ds, as long as it's a good Class D, there's no comparison. They're more efficient. They're just better.
Yeah. I think Class D have just come so long.
They have.
So far, not so long.
I think
so
a long time ago that may have been true return, but now Class D's the place to be.
He says, what about no class? I like that. Decibel Destroyer, did Youthman ever do a room tour of Ryan's room? I actually did. Probably the easiest way to find it is if you search Youthman.
It's changed quite a bit since then, though.
Yeah, but they'll at least see like your room, your sides, and set up. If you do Youthman Martin Logan tour, if that pulls it up. Yep. So if you search for Youthman Martin Logan tour, it's the first one that pops up. So, but yeah, go check it out, man. It was a fun one. We'll have to redo it one day, but we'll start before midnight that time.
Yeah.
Last 4 questions. Brian says mulling S7Is. So that is per listen. S5Is and the R5Is. Let's see for LCR. Will I be able to tell and worth the expense? So in other words, he's looking at 3 different options there, right? Or 2 different options.
It's two different options.
So either the S7I with the S5I.
That'd be my guess of what he's doing.
Or 3 R5.
The main difference between these is going to be how loud they can get. The S7I's power handling is much greater than the R5I's. It's the same as the S series in general, like the S7T over the R5T or the R7T. The S series can just handle a tremendous amount of more power than the R series can. So if you're needing that power and you're really chasing reference volume and you need to throw a decent ways, S series all the way. If you don't, and you've got a pretty close seating position, R5 series, the R series is probably going to be great. I've sold a lot of per listen lately. People have been very, very happy with them. I have had no complaints about these speakers. They're just phenomenal.
I know from my perspective too, I love the fact of even just doing an LCR, whatever you're going with. If you're able to do 3 identical speakers, man, you're going to love it.
Oh, for sure.
Absolutely love it. Regardless of what model you go with. that would be like the best setup. Having 3 identical speakers across the front, man, that's a sweet setup.
Yep.
I haven't heard the R series, but I know when I was talking to, I think it was Dan, or it could have been Eric at Cedia. No, I'm sorry. Yeah, it was at Cedia when I interviewed them. I think that was one of the things he was saying is like, it's mainly just SPL. It's mainly, you know, we took mostly the same, you know, technology and everything, but, you know,
there's a little bit difference in frequency response, but the main thing, as you said, is going to be volume.
Yeah. I think either one would rock, man. If you're interested, I think Ryan, oh shoot, I clicked the wrong button. Just shoot him a email.
They're great.
You can get your price.
As long as they're in stock, they ship quick.
Last 3 questions of the night. Smooth one. I have a question. How do people calibrate a brand new projector before it's ever used? I thought you had to put at least 150 hours on it. Good question. Ryan, you know way more about calibration on projectors than I do. Is it a good idea to run?
I don't think so nearly as much with lasers as it was with bulbs.
Okay. So with bulbs, did you have to run a certain
you may
amount
want
of hours?
I always heard like you want to have
150 is probably a lot.
150 is a lot.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe 8, like have it on for a while. But with lasers, I don't even know that I would worry about it at all.
Yeah. Okay. Like I said, I don't have much knowledge in that area.
That's actually something that I'm getting ready to get started, because I spent
calibration kit, didn't you?
Far too much on meters.
Nice.
But to be able to give that to you guys, so when you buy projectors, I can pre-calibrate them before I ship them out.
Ooh, that's a sweet little bonus there, man. Nice. I like that. So Eric says, do you guys have separate dedicated stereo listening systems, or are you listening or combining this into your home theater system? So great question. In my setup, Eric, I have my dedicated theater room, which mostly I'm movies. I do listen to some music in there. But then I also have like just a 2-channel setup in my living room, but it's not like even a dedicated stereo listening. It's more for music playing around the house. Now we have a TV out there, so I've got it hooked up to that. So it's a much better experience sound-wise than the, you know, TV speakers. But I personally don't have like a 2-channel listening setup. Ryan, what about you? I know you got a couple systems.
I mean, I primarily do all of my 2-channel in my theater, but my fronts are made for 2-channel. I'm a believer in, if a speaker can do home theater well, it can do the other well. A good speaker is a good speaker.
I agree. For sure. I just don't do a lot of 2-channel listening. So
I use my theater primarily for 2-channel.
Yep. Last 2 questions of the night. Kyle S says, I'm eyeing some 4-ohm LCR speakers with a recommended power range of 50 to 200 amps. Assuming he means 200 watts. The Emotiva Basics A3 amp drives 3 channels at 200 watts into 4 ohms. Is that sufficient? Any reason to go bigger? Always a good idea to go bigger. You know, I like to recommend a lot of times, and this is just me arbitrarily, I see no problem with having more power. I'd rather have more power than not enough power. Is the Basics amplifier sufficient? The biggest thought that I have on that is I haven't been able to measure them, and I reviewed it, but I also reviewed it with some pretty efficient speakers. So it did really well. I was really pleased with it. I think it offers a lot of value, but you know, whether or not your 4-ohm speakers are going to need more than what it can provide, that I don't know. And I don't know how accurate, you know, because I mean, let's face it, there's a lot of times there's company. I'm not saying this just about Emotiva, just in general. You know, not all of them are rated exactly the same. They rate them in different ways. So I don't know if I've never measured it to see if they accurately are able and capable of actually delivering 200 watts by 3 into 4-ohm.
I'm always a believer in overdoing your amplifier. As you push an amplifier harder, you're going to run into a lower and lower synad score, We talked about it earlier, how much that matters.
Mm-hmm.
It will matter at some point if it goes too bad.
Yeah.
But I'm a believer in making sure that you have enough headroom in order to power the speakers efficiently. And most of the time, amplifier companies are going to overstate the capability of the amplifier.
Yeah.
Most of the time.
Yeah.
In this case, I would probably like to see a little bit of headroom, especially if, well, I'd like to see a little bit of headroom in that case. I've pretty easily pushed a bass X into protection in my demo setup when we were doing stuff.
Yeah.
And they were decently efficient speakers. They weren't inefficient.
Right.
So I think it's a good amp. There's a lot of variables in that it depends on how loud you listen. If you don't listen very loud, it's probably okay. If you do and you're pushing to the limits all the time, you're probably going to want something bigger.
Yeah. I always like to have 200 watts, just me personally, into 8 ohms, because then that's going to give you a little bit more in 4 ohm. Could be 350 or so. But that's just
Depends on the amp, but yeah.
Yeah, that's just me. So last question of the night. Casey Draper says, what DB do you guys watch movies at? Great question, man. I listen most of the time. I don't really measure the dB. I just know where it is in reference to volume or reference. You can't really say reference to reference, but I listen typically about -10 to -15 dB on my AVR. So that's going to put me under reference level. Ryan is like 30 dB over reference most of the time. He likes it loud. Put it this way. We've done several demos and we've done several events at his house that I've been a part of. And at some point, I'm putting my earplugs in. And then at some point, I need a break. And I go to the next room.
But you're usually in there for a long time.
We're doing this for 3-4 hours straight. Yeah, man. It's like
it's a long time.
Yeah. So what do you typically like? What
typically where I'm at?
Are you at reference most of the time?
Let's take the subs out of the equation.
Yeah.
My speaker volume, I'm at probably -5 to -10. But the subs, I run probably 15 hot now.
About 78 hot.
So I'm over quite a bit.
Yeah.
But I guess overall, probably right around reference volume.
So here's what I would recommend, Casey. I mean, and I love it loud and I like demoing loud, but just be careful. You know, and I try to tell people that all the time. It's like, look, you only get your ears once, so you don't want to damage them. So just be careful, like not cranking it for too long, because you definitely can experience some hearing loss or tinnitus or whatever they call it. So you definitely want to do that. Wife says -17 for her. Jim, yeah.
She doesn't like it. She can leave.
Yes, I'm typically under reference. I'm never really watching a movie like the whole movie at reference. That's pretty loud to me. So, yep, Jay Cameron, you're exactly right. Let your ears be the guide. Like I said, man, you only get them once. So, well, cool, man. It's been a pretty long one, but you guys had some awesome questions. I know a lot of you guys asked additional questions that we didn't get to. So definitely sorry about that. But we do this every Sunday night, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Love for you to join us. Think about your question. If it didn't get answered tonight, come back next week. Make sure to drop it at the very beginning of the night, because we just kind of go through them. We star them as good questions come in, and then we just hit them along the way. Of course, the super chats like Eric just dropped, we always hit those. I appreciate that. Great Sunday with you guys. Appreciate your efforts and all you put in here. Go Mahomes. So forgive me, who's Mahomes?
Chiefs quarterback.
Okay. So I watch zero sports, guys. So don't
tore it up last night or yesterday against the Raiders.
Nice. Yeah, I watch zero sports. So, but definitely, man, we always have fun here. We love answering your questions. Hopefully this provides value to you. If it does, man, even drop a like, let us know, let YouTube know that you enjoyed it. Hopefully it'll serve this video up to more people, and I'll chop some of these questions up and post those individually for other guys that are watching this on the replay. So on behalf of myself, Jonathan, Ryan, and I hope y'all have a great week. Ryan, you got any thoughts?
Nope. I got a JVC NZ7 and a
Oh yeah,
Kaleidoscape 12 terabyte.
yeah.
I think that's ready to rock and roll. That
So
can go out immediately. And then if you guys need anything else, like somebody was talking about Stewart per listen, any of that stuff, I promise I don't push. I don't bite. If you guys just have a question or just want to talk about some stuff or have some questions about gear, I'm happy to help. I'm like the most non-pressure sales guy.
Ryan will talk you out of buying.
I do.
If he
I do that quite
that
frequently.
Yeah.
Quite frequently, because I want what's best for you guys.
Yeah.
Not good for the pocketbook, but that you guys are more important than that.
I've always said this in business. If you take care of your customers, they'll take care of you. Bottom line.
Yeah,
man.
I agree.
So
I agree.
Gimpy says Ryan rocks. I agree, man, or I wouldn't have partnered with him for M-Wave. And so, like I said, guys, make sure you head over to the website. We'd love to have you join us July 14th through the 16th of this year. Gonna have some cool stuff we're working up. MidwestAVExperience.com in Kansas City. We'd love to have you. And like I said, you guys have an awesome week, and we will catch y'all in the next live stream.